Hello everyone, this is Kristen from Christopia Studios, finally back after completing holiday commissions. Today I want to talk about using tracing as a tool in your art. It seems there is a never-ending discussion in artist groups regarding whether or not tracing an image to transfer to your artwork is somehow cheating. Please enjoy this speed painting of an image I traced and transferred down while I discuss the topic. A year or so ago, my husband had a bit of a run-in with a cashier at a local art supply chain store. He was purchasing tracing paper, and this apparent expert decided to loudly tell him that real artists don't use tracing paper. It was pretty obvious that she had heard this from another source, probably an art teacher, considering that my own art teachers way back in my school days told us the same things. And she decided in a pretty arrogant tone to school my husband. Of course, being who he is, my husband looked her straight in the eye and told her that it wasn't very good customer service to chastise a stranger for purchasing a product that the store she worked in sold, especially when she had no idea who he was or what he would be using the paper for. This cashier isn't alone in her insistence that tracing an image is somehow wrong or cheating. My art teachers from my school days were very likely pounding that into our heads because they wanted us to learn to draw freehand rather than relying on tracing. They wanted us to express our own artistic freedom, and that's a good thing. They had good points because tracing can be used as a crutch by people who don't want to learn how to draw from observation. However, if you hear someone saying that to be a good artist you need to draw from real life or outside or even from memory only, call BS on that. Most of those people don't realize that tracing, when used as a tool, can actually help a person learn to draw better. That's why I'm not of the group of people who brag that they never trace an image, and in fact I'm an advocate of using tracing as a tool to help people learn to draw freehand. I'm going to discuss several points in this discussion, from whether or not tracing helps a person learn to draw down to whether or not it is cheating to trace. So, point 1. Some folks think that tracing keeps a person from learning how to draw, but it can actually help you learn to see things differently and improve your freehand drawing if you use it as a learning tool. Learning to draw isn't about drawing what you think you see, but drawing what you actually see. Think of tracing as a beginning, like training wheels on a bicycle. They help you learn to ride the bike because you're not having to focus on just keeping it upright while you learn to pedal, brake, etc. In a similar way, tracing images can help you focus on the lines of the image without worrying about whether or not you're getting a perfect likeness. You're developing muscle memory as well as hand-eye coordination, which are very important in learning to use your drawing materials. Suppose you sat a group of beginner students down with a reference photo and told half of them to draw the image freehand by observing the image, then told the other group to trace the image and then transfer their tracing down to paper with graphite transfer paper. Then, have the two groups repeat the process several times. For the final drawing, if you removed the photo and the tracing paper from both groups and asked them all to draw the image from memory, you'll very likely get a better result from the tracing group rather than the freehand group. Why? Because the tracing group would have developed the muscle memory and hand-eye coordination of tracing the accurate image down to paper. The freehand group would continue to make the same mistakes over and over again because they hadn't developed the muscle memory of the accurate image. My own ability to draw since childhood is proof of that. When I was in grammar school, I actually loved drawing and doodling. My school teachers could attest to that, as I spent more time drawing in the margins of my papers than I did listening and doing the actual schoolwork. I especially loved horses, and I was very frustrated when I couldn't get a good likeness of a horse from my memory down onto paper. I mean, we had horses. I knew what they looked like. One summer between 3rd and 4th grade, I had just turned 9 years old. I spent the summer getting my dad's horse magazines out and tracing all the beautiful horse photos in those magazines. I had already been told in school at that early age that tracing was somehow bad, but I didn't care. I wanted to use those tracings to make my own little coloring book of horses. By the time summer break was over and I went back to school, I had traced hundreds of horses from those magazines. One especially daydreamy day, back in class, I was sitting in the back of the room gazing out of the window, and I started to doodle. I started to draw a horse's head on the back of my math worksheet, and it took me a while to realize that I was drawing a very detailed and well done horse's head without tracing or looking at an image of a horse. My teacher came around, and while she was very unimpressed with my math skills, she was very impressed with my drawing. I had developed the muscle memory and hand-eye coordination to draw a realistic image freehand because I had spent so much time tracing. Point number 2. Tracing saves a ton of time and anguish for an artist who's trying to get a realistic likeness. One of the ways I make a little money from my art is in doing commissions of animals and people. After many years of developing expertise in drawing, I can do a realistic freehand drawing to get a good likeness of the animal. However, it takes a large chunk of time to do it perfectly. If I were to freehand every single commission I did, I'd have to charge almost triple my current rate in order to get paid enough for my time. By getting a very good photograph and then digitally making it into line art, I'll show you how to do that in a future video, then printing and transferring that image down to my paper, I save many hours that I can devote to producing the shading and values in the portrait. Real portrait technique isn't seen in the line drawing. It is seen in the values and details. I guarantee that if a person does not know how to draw without a tracing, they won't get a realistic result with a tracing either. Point 3 is related to that. Not only does tracing save time, especially if you're doing a very realistic portrait, it can save your sanity. There is nothing worse than putting in hours and hours of work on a project and then realizing that there's something not quite right about it. The eyes aren't aligned correctly, for example, or it's not the right size to fit the face, or the forehead is too high. When you're learning and developing as an artist, that's okay because you're developing expertise by practicing. But if you're drawing something as a gift or a commission, you don't want to have to draw it 5,000 times until you get the perfect likeness. I've seen so many new artists saying, "Hey everyone, this is a drawing I'm doing of my nephew as a gift for his parents, but something isn't right. Can you help?" Often there's no help but to start over if they're working in a medium like colored pencils or if their dimensions are too far off. Point 4 addresses the common misconception that if you're tracing an image, you're somehow deceiving people into believing that you have more artistic ability than you really do. Over a decade ago, I stopped drawing. It was a full-on stop that I didn't recover from until recent years. I still painted occasionally in acrylics and got into pour painting for abstract backgrounds a couple years ago in order to get back into art without getting frustrated doing photorealistic portraits. I still love pour painting and then embellishing those pours with abstract or realistic images over them, and I continue to do tutorials for those too. But I wasn't drawing. As for picking up a pencil, colored pencil, or pastel, I was over it. I got so bogged down into making sure every commission I did was a perfect representation of the person or creature that I spent hours and hours, sometimes days, getting the likeness sketched in before I could actually approach the shading and the colors. Of course, I was under the impression that I had to freehand the image or I would somehow be lying to the recipient of the portrait. It took me years to come to the realization that I am an artist. I can freehand and eventually get to a realistic likeness without tracing. My abilities are there. I can freehand a drawing just as good as the ones I have traced and then transferred down, and you would not be able to tell the difference in my end result. But I can't make the money back on the time and frustration it takes to get that realistic likeness unless I charge triple for my commissions. Maybe one day I'll be able to command those prices, but that time is not now. So while I freehand a lot, especially when doing more loose impressionistic work, if I'm looking for a realistic result, I will trace and transfer the image to save time. It has renewed my former joy in creating art to accept that it is not a deception to do this. As I said earlier, someone with no ability to draw or knowledge of how to use values, direction, or shading is not going to get a realistic portrait anyway, no matter how well they trace. On to point 5. I've heard some people say that tracing a photograph or image rather than freehanding from that image is a copyright violation. These people are focusing on the wrong thing in regards to what copyright really means. It doesn't matter whether you're freehanding or tracing. If you are using an image that you don't have full permission to use, it's a copyright violation. All photographs that you see in print or on the internet are copyrighted unless you get them off of websites like Pixabay or Paint My Photo. Beware, some other sites that claim to have free images but don't actually have the copyrights on those images are not the right place to choose these photos. If you are not getting your images from a reputable site or getting full permission from the photographer, you are not allowed to draw that image in any way if you plan to sell the drawing or show it on a tutorial. Often, even if I have permission from the photographer to use their photograph, I'll still not show the photograph in my tutorials, but I'll show my finished piece instead as a reference for students to trace or use as references when following along, just to keep on the safe side of copyright. Point 6. Can tracing become a crutch? Yes. This is the biggest argument, actually, against tracing, and it's really true. Tracing can absolutely become a crutch if you use it exclusively, even in practice. You won't further develop your drawing skills if you trace everything. So limit tracing to commission pieces that must be fully accurate or to pieces where you're struggling to get a good likeness. Use other techniques for practice or other drawings, including using a grid, turning the work upside down, or just freehanding by looking at what you see. Finally, number 7, which is really related to all of the previous points. Does tracing mean you're not a real artist? Most of us have heard that. Many of us, myself included, have repeated that old myth to ourselves. The fact is that artists all the way back in recorded history have utilized tracing methods. Artists like Leonardo da Vinci used prism lights to project images onto canvas so they could trace them down. Does that make da Vinci a lesser artist than he is made out to be? Many professional artists today use projectors or transfer paper to get an accurate image down onto their work surface. Are they lesser artists as a result? My answer, obviously, is no. For an artist who does commissions, tracing speeds up the process and helps to keep their artwork more affordable. Commissioning art is a competitive business. Until you're well established, and even after that, being able to get commissions finished more quickly means more openings in your schedule and more sales. So for those who've been told that an artist who utilizes tracing isn't a real artist and who felt defeated and unmotivated as a result, understand that unless you're using tracing as a crutch and not as a way to speed things up or improve your skills, free yourself from these attitudes. Tracing itself takes a bit of time to master, especially in regards to getting detail down or to outline areas where value or color is going to be different or where hair direction changes. The ability to do those things, like getting correct values and color and direction, those are the things that define you as an artist, not your ability to freehand something perfectly and realistically every time. For a full-length tutorial on this little guy, head on over to my brand new Patreon channel. For a low monthly fee, you can get this and many more lessons in multiple media, including pastel, acrylic pouring and embellishing, and other mediums. The link is in the description below. I hope you enjoyed this video and the discussion of the benefits of using tracing in your art. Now get out there and create stuff. Please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel for more art content. Hit that little bell if you want to be notified when my next videos go up. There are also links below to my art website and my new Patreon page, where monthly subscribers get full tutorials on multiple forms of art from beginners to advanced. There are also links to my Facebook page and my Etsy, eBay, and Poshmark shops, where you can find my pieces for purchase. If you want to donate to my channel, there's another link below to my PayPal tip jar. I hope you're staying safe and have a great day.